Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Enterprise Bank and Trust is the proud sponsor of today's Going Beyond program, with 6 locations in the St. Louis area. Contact Enterprise Bank for your business or personal banking needs. Call 314-993-6200 or visit enterprisebank.com. Enterprise Bank and Trust. Create success.
We're going beyond.
Today on Going Beyond.
It's my great pleasure to have on the show today someone who has led the way in helping us get stronger, get better, deal with all the issues that are making us all collectively anxious and nervous.
You know, there's this concern for peace and change and wanting to voice their opinion. And we look at our history, you know, the voices of people have brought about change. And I think we've all seen that the power of communication can go a long way. We saw how it had a calming effect on this community. And so, you know, I've met with some people that early on were pretty defensive, said a lot of things out of anger. But now, we've gone to meetings and sat down at the table, and we may disagree and maybe say it in a different way. But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for our community.
From the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Captain Ron Johnson, Beyond Housing is going beyond.
That and more ahead today on Going Beyond with Chris Krehmeyer, right after this. Enterprise Bank and Trust is the proud sponsor of today's Going Beyond program, with a strong commitment to helping clients achieve a lifetime of financial success. We welcome growing businesses, professionals, nonprofits, and individuals, not just as our customers, but as our neighbors. Talent, strength, passion. Call 314-993-6200 or visit enterprisebank.com for more information. Enterprise Bank and Trust. Create success.
Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
I'm Todd Swanstrom from the University of Missouri St. Louis, and I love talking to Chris Krehmeyer about how to build better neighborhoods. And I love listening to Going Beyond.
We're going beyond. Welcome to this edition of Going Beyond. I'm your host, Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. It is my great pleasure to have on the show today someone who has led the way in helping us get stronger, get better, deal with all the issues that are making us all collectively anxious and nervous. From the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Captain Ron Johnson. Captain Johnson, thanks so much for being on the show.
No problem. Appreciate you having me.
Captain, there's a lot of stuff going on. So just a couple of days ago, the governor announced a state of emergency, which I know has some technical pieces to it, but clearly in the St. Louis region, it gave lots of people pause and concern. Could you tell our listeners what exactly it means and what it doesn't mean and what we should take from that announcement?
Really, the guard is just to make sure we've got enough resources and make sure that the public remains safe, the businesses remain whole, and that the constitutional rights of all of our citizens and visitors to our regions are maintained. So it's really just a resource. You will not see any of those Guard members actually on the front line having the front line contact with protesters or rioters. That's not the intent.
And then for those who have said the state of emergency gives law enforcement the powers to, in essence, get rid of some of their individual rights and freedoms, can you speak to that? I can't count how many times I've heard that in the last couple of days.
No, like I said, and like the governor has stated in some of his comments, it's a resource just to ensure public safety. It is in no way intended to take away anyone's rights. Actually, our plan is to make sure that all those rights are protected and maintained.
I can't imagine the number of hours you spent talking to a little bit of everybody all across the region. Can you give folks a sense of the kinds of things you heard that gives you a level of confidence that, when the grand jury finishes its process, that we as a region are going to get through this, and a lot of the anxiety and fear may just be a little misplaced? Again, not that there won't be some things that'll happen, but again, my sense is, and you're a whole lot closer than I am, that there are a lot of people of goodwill and good intentions, may not agree on things, but understand the importance of doing whatever they're going to do on either side, but do it professionally, do it the right way to try to do your particular job in this scenario. So give our listeners a sense of kind of what you anticipate and the level of confidence you have that we're going to be able to get through this.
Well, and I said from the start, when we looked at the protesters, well over 90% of the protesters were out there for a peaceful change. And a small percentage have kind of been able to define the community, and I think that's been unfair. I think this is a community of great character. When I've gone around and met with many different groups and individuals, there's this concern for peace and change and wanting to voice their opinion. And we look at our history, the voices of people have brought about change. And I think we've all seen that the power of communication can go a long way. And we saw how it had a calming effect on this community. And so, I've met with some people that early on were pretty defensive, said a lot of things out of anger. But now, we've gone to meetings and sat down at the table, and we may disagree and maybe say it in a different way. But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for our community. And so I think that we will see great character come out of this, and I think the true character of our community will be defined moving forward, no matter what that decision is, because there'll be a lot of work to do far beyond any decision that comes out of the grand jury.
I've heard some people criticize the length of time that the grand jury process is taking, but do you think that length of time that's both allowed law enforcement to get specialized training as well as to allow the protesters to get a little more organized and to understand what they can and can't do, and again, get trained themselves on how to protest peacefully? Do you think this block of time has been helpful for us as a region, particularly as it relates to both sides having a better understanding about what's coming on the pike and how to deal with it in a more effective way?
And I think you've given a perfect assessment of it. I think you're absolutely right. But it's also given us a time to sit down at the table. It's also given us a time to communicate. And I think that that's something that has not happened in this region for a long time, the kind of communication that has happened here. And I think the communication that's happened here can stand as a model for this nation of what can take place if we sit down at the table, and those that are at the table are reflective of the community. And that's what's happened here. There's been conversations with people that are part of the community that normally would not get a chance to speak their opinion. And what's happened is we're hearing from not what people think the community needs. It's the community telling people what they need and what they want. And so those are positive things.
So, again, as we look to move forward, I was at a meeting not too long ago when Reverend Starsky Wilson and Reverend Tracy Blackman were talking to this crowd. It was a little mini conference. It was sort of about 150 people there. Probably 3/4 of the room was white. And the things that they said were passionate, professional, but you could sense the level of discomfort in the room. And I don't say that as a negative thing at all. I just say that as a factual statement. How do you think we can continue to have the right kinds of conversations? As you said, you've been talking to people recently that, when this started in August on that tragic day, you had much different conversations with. How as a region do you think we can continue those conversations? Because they won't be easy, and human nature says, I want to avoid being uncomfortable. I would rather avoid things that make me feel that level of discomfort. How do you think we can continue those conversations after the grand jury finishes its process?
Well, I think those conversations have to be open and honest. And I've had the opportunity to talk to many people in our community that have been diverse, white residents of our community, and their passion and concern is no different than mine. They want the best for this community, and many will say that I moved to this community. I still live here, and I remain here because I embrace the diversity. And I just think, when we're at odds with each other and there's a lot of screaming and yelling, sometimes we miss the true character and intent of those around us. And so I think that it is a community united and has come together. But sometimes I think, we all have conversations that maybe are uncomfortable, are tough to have, and we're having those. And people are understanding and reaching out. Once again, it's the power of communication. And we see it working, and I see it working. There's small steps, but it took us a while to get here. It's going to take us a while to get where we need to go.
Captain, could you talk a little bit about and help our listeners? Because typically if we're hearing stuff about law enforcement, it's been negative. Again, things that haven't shined a positive light on law enforcement. Could you give our listeners just, one or two things that you've been able to see over these last couple of months of this, the incredible strength and dignity which, law enforcement who's been involved in this have had to have to be successful, that usually doesn't get any spotlight in the media. Could you tell our folks a little bit about kind of what you've seen and what you've experienced?
Well, I am proud of the law enforcement officers that have stood up and been professional and showed great courage. And they are a part of this community. At the end of the day, when we take off this uniform, we're men and women who have families, and we want great things for the communities that we live in. And so I applaud them for that. But we also have seen the things that we need to do better and had those discussions. And sometimes the things that we're hearing we need to do better kind of, touch at who we are. But I think that, I look at myself, even if one thinks, I do a good job, I do all the things right. But if one of us doesn't do what we need to do, then we all have a charge, and correcting that. And we can't just say, well, you know what, I just want to talk about the good things. I'm not going to look at or speak or take any responsibility for something that's bad in our profession. If something's bad, then we all need to grab a hold of that and make it better, because it makes us better.
So again, as you know, you've had a unique perspective on this. And by the way, congratulations on the recent acknowledgement by Ebony Magazine. Obviously, you don't do this for acknowledgments, but congratulations nonetheless. How has this changed you? I mean, I've heard you speak eloquently and passionately about, as you said, you go home and you take off the uniform, and you're no longer Captain Johnson from the Missouri State Highway Patrol. You're Ron Johnson, citizen, husband, father. How has this impacted you, and how do you think, moving forward with the rest of your career, you think this is going to change the way that you think and the way that you carry yourself? Or maybe it won't change. Maybe, obviously you came to this with who you were, right, with your own compass of who you are and what you believed in. But I can't help that going through all this hasn't had some impact on you.
Well, I think that the past few months have made me rely on my faith more than I ever have. But it's also made me realize that God didn't give us more than we can bear, and he puts us through challenging times for a reason. And I think he's put our region through challenging times, and I think he's given me a voice for a reason. And I think that I need to make sure that I use that and stay grounded in that. You talked about the Ebony Award, and, I've gotten that award, but I also accept that award on behalf of the men and women of law enforcement, the peaceful protesters, but also of the soul of Mike Brown Jr. that has created this change in this conversation. And so I accept that on behalf of all those I just mentioned.
So as we come to a close here, Captain, can you give our listeners, because again, I think yours has been a very unique and calming voice in the region that others may have attempted to do so and haven't been quite as successful. Can you tell our listeners, what do you anticipate? The grand jury makes their announcement, whatever that announcement may be. They make their announcement. What is your sense of what's going to happen in the subsequent days that follows?
Well, I believe no matter what the decision is, and I've said that I am not going to let rumors decide how the community and region will react, but I hold faith in the character of this community, and that will shine through, and that, in the first, and I call it phases, in the first phase of this, I think that this community was depicted in a way that doesn't define who we are. And I say we, by a small percentage. And in the meetings that I've gone to and discussions that I've heard in the meetings that the other chiefs have gone to, and just watching some of the groups talk to the media, that I think that the groups have decided that we are not going to let that small percentage define who we are. We are going to exercise our rights. I think law enforcement is going to show even greater the professionalism that we have. And I think putting all those together, that what some people would want to happen is not, and I just don't think that the outcome is going to be as bad as some expect it to be or some want it to be. And I truly believe that.
Captain Ron Johnson from Missouri Highway Patrol, for your leadership, for your dignity, for helping all of us be just a little bit stronger during some challenging times. You have our undying thanks and respect. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Enterprise Bank and Trust is the proud sponsor of today's Going Beyond program, with a strong commitment to helping clients achieve a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank and Trust. Create success.
We're going beyond.
Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Proudly promoting, presenting, and producing positive programming.
Neighborhood is where you live, and we want to keep it strong and vibrant. This is Chris Krehmeyer with Beyond Housing. We are going beyond.
Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. Located at 4156 Manchester, phone number 314-533-0600. The only organization in the St. Louis region that offers access to affordable housing. Wherever we work, our goal is to help transform people, families, and communities so that they achieve the skills, strategies, resources, and commitment to succeed for the long term. See our work at beyondhousing.org. Podcast for Going Beyond can be heard, downloaded, and shared by visiting hallelujah1600.com. Listed under the music tab, on demand. Going Beyond is another positive production of RareGem Productions.